All right, so I am Casey. I'm a wine concierge here at Firstleaf. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm married and have a son, and I'm also pregnant with my second. So I will be tasting tonight. I'm probably going to try to go off screen so you guys don't have to watch me spit into a cup. I don't think anybody wants to see that, so I'll try to get off screen for that. But these are some of my favorite wines in our portfolio. So I'm going to pass it off to Krista.
Hi, everybody. I am Krista, and I am a wine concierge here as well. I've been with Firstleaf for almost a year now. I live right outside of Philadelphia. I also have 2 kids. I have 2 sons, and I'm just really excited to be here. I think this is going to be a really fun and informative night. And yeah, I'm really excited. And we actually have a little surprise guest tonight, a member of our winemaking team, Jake. So I'll let him take it away next.
Yeah. Hi, Jake Fernandez. So part of the winemaking team here at Firstleaf. I'll be hanging out throughout the tasting. We're sticking around to answer any questions towards the end. I'm here in Petaluma, so in Sonoma County wine country, where most of our wine is bottled.
Perfect. Okay. So a little housekeeping. I believe everyone is just automatically put on mute, but we will want to just stay that way during, but please utilize the chat feature. I'm going to be looking at it the whole time. I'll try to type back and answer as many questions as I can. And then I'm going to talk about some of the questions out loud during. So if you have the tasting sheet too, that was attached to the last email you should have gotten, it's okay if you don't, but if you have it printed out, feel free to use it. That's kind of the guide we'll go through throughout the tasting, like the aroma, taste, things like that. So it's a great thing to take notes on if you have that printed out, but no worries if you don't. So if everyone can just have their bottles open. And like I said a minute ago, if you have the Chardonnay and Rosé chilled, that's perfect. And we're going to start with our Chardonnay, followed by the Rosé, and ending with the Sangiovese. So I'm going to hand it off to Krista so we can start on our Gilded Letter Chardonnay.
All right. Thanks, Case. Let's get started. Okay. If everyone wants to pour a little bit of the Chardonnay in their glass, we will get started. And like Casey said, we're starting with the Chardonnay. When you are doing a wine tasting, you typically want to start lightest to heaviest. So in this case, since we have a white, a rosé, and a red, we'll start with the white, move on to the rosé, and then end with our heaviest bodied wine, the red at the end. And the way we are going to taste these wines, we're going to look at them in 4 ways. The first will be aroma, appearance, taste, and then we will look at the finish of the wine. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to do, we have a little bit in our glass. We want to swirl it around, really let this wine open up. And we're going to put our nose in the glass pretty deep in there, and we'll take a smell and let's see what scents we are picking up, what aromas we're seeing or smelling. And as you guys are doing this, I want you to, like Casey said, write into the comments, let us know what you're smelling. We want to hear from you guys as much as possible. So right off the bat, right away, I'm getting a lot of apricot, a lot of peach, a lot of that stone fruit. I'm also getting a little floral note in there as well, which is pretty difficult to pick out. And I think we'll kind of touch on that a little bit. So as you guys are writing in the comments, just a couple things on how to use your senses when you're picking out aromas. So wine's most fundamental qualities can be identified by really taking it one sense at a time. And that's why we're starting with smell. And when you're swirling the wine around, it's almost like you're turning the volume up on a stereo system. You kind of start small, you start low, really let the sound build, let the smells build in the wine. And yeah, really let the wine open up. So Casey, are there anyone in the comments saying what they're smelling?
Yes. Okay. So we've got floral, which is impressive because I struggle to find the floral in things, but it's definitely here. We've got peach, pineapple, which I agree. I smell it too. I don't think it's in the tasting notes on our site for this, but I think I definitely pick up on the pineapple, pear, buttery. I think we've got a lot of really good answers.
Did I say brioche before? Because there is like a little toasted brioche in here too. So you mentioned butteriness. And I think you can really tell that in like the brioche. Is anyone picking that up at all? Anyone writing that in the comments?
People saying, yeah, they smell it.
Okay, awesome. All right, good. Okay, good. All right, so let's move into appearance next. So we're going to swirl the wine again in our glass, and now we're going to hold up the glass to some sort of neutral background. If you have a piece of paper in front of you, or maybe a wall that has a neutral color, let's hold it up to there, and let's take a look at the color. And as you guys are kind of taking a look at the color, I want to talk about what appearance can show you in a wine. So the main color source in white wine comes from oxidation. So exposure to air deepens whites from like a really faint yellow to a really dark gold. And actually the most common form of oxidation is barrel aging. So an oaky Chardonnay, such as this one, which we can see when we taste it in a little bit, tends to be darker than a crisp stainless steel Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay. So the darker the color gold, the more likely it is that it was darkened from barrel aging or just age in general. So when you guys are holding this up to a neutral background, what color are you noticing? And one thing to look at too is the edge of the juice. That's called the meniscus, and that's really going to show you a nice color there. So again, write in the comments, let us know what you guys are thinking. It could be anything from, you know, yellow, golden, a straw color. Let me know what you guys think. Right off the bat, for me looking at it, I mean, it seems very faint to me. I'm going to go with like a straw color. If anyone agrees with me, let me know.
I see straw too, but I did
straw, yeah.
I think that there is a setting on when you're commenting, and I could be wrong. Okay, I've got some people that can see all the comments now because the comments were just coming to us and they weren't able to see each other's.
Okay.
I believe when it says two, and I think you should be able to change it to the setting everyone instead of host and panelist. I'm hoping that should work for everybody. If not, I will see what I can do. But yes, a lot of straw, light golden, and I completely agree.
Awesome. Okay, good. The other thing that appearance can show you is the alcohol level in a wine. And this comes from the legs. So again, we're going to swirl our glass. And I'm also curious to know who even, like, does anyone know what legs are? Have you heard this term before? If not, that's totally fine. If so, that's great too. So when you swirl this around, you want to look for the teardrops that form on the edge of the glass, like teardrops or raindrops. They kind of fall down into the juice again. So this shows you the amount of alcohol in the wine. So a pretty standard alcohol percentage is about 13.5%. And you can tell if something has more than that, if there are a lot of legs, less if there are less legs. So I'm sure you can see on your bottle, but before you even look, or before I tell you the alcohol percentage, what do you guys think? Are you seeing a lot of legs or moderate or not too many? I also want to tell you as you're typing in that the sweeter the wine, the slower they fall. So take a look at that too as you're noticing these legs. See how fast they fall into the juice. Make a little mental note of that. And then when we taste the wine, we'll be able to see if we can put into practice what we're doing now. So again, the sweeter the wine, the slower they fall. Also, heavy wines tend to drip more slowly as well. So we'll take a little mental note of that too. What are everyone saying about the legs?
Moderate, medium.
Yeah, perfect.
Minimal. I think that's all good.
Yeah, no, that's great.
There is that good. How many legs are a lot? That's a question I had in the beginning. I think you have to start comparing.
Yeah.
So almost take a mental note of how much you see here and the ones we're about to do. And now in the future, just always take a look at that. It takes like 2 seconds to do. And you can start figuring out what is a lot. There's no amounts. There's not like a 10 or 20 that you need to count, but you'll really start to get a good visual and figure that out as you go.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of the beauty of tastings too, since we're trying 3. Let's make a mental note that to me, it seems like there are a lot of legs in this wine. And so when we go into the rosé, let's see what we think. And again, with the red, and that might answer your question too. The more wine you try, and as you're like noticing these things now that you've joined this tasting and you're learning, it's something to keep a note of and keep an eye out for. I think that will help too. You can just always take a mental note of how many legs you see on your glass. So did anyone guess, has anyone said anything about the percentage, Casey? They can see it right on their bottle. So
no, but I did actually just have a question. So
yeah.
what's the relationship between legs and alcohol content again, which I was going to answer on here, but you might as well share now.
Yeah. So the more alcohol, the more legs. So yes. So this wine has about 14.1%. So that's a little bit more than average. Like I said, it's about 13.5 is standard average for domestic wines. So this one is a little bit higher than that. So that's why you're going to get more legs. Any other questions in there?
Nope.
Not yet. Okay. Okay, good. Yeah. So just kind of a recap. Looking at a wine can tell us a lot about it. Oh, the other thing that I forgot to mention is the vintage of a wine, which is the year the wine was made. This one happens to be a 2018 vintage. The darker a white wine, the older the vintage. So the lighter, the younger. So this one, as we can see, we decided that that was a straw color, so a pretty light yellow. And that makes sense because it's a pretty young vintage. And that's actually the opposite with red wine. The lighter the red wine, the older, the darker, the younger. So when we get to that Sangiovese, we'll have to take a look. Okay, now we will move into the tasting part, which is the most fun part. Okay, so let's all take a sip. And while you're taking a sip, let's really focus on what fruits we are picking out. Let's see if the aromas we picked out matches what we're tasting. And then actually, while you're doing that, while you're picking out the flavors that you're tasting, type in to chat what you're tasting, see if it matches up with those aromas. And I also just want to explain a little bit about what causes the fruit flavor in wine. So when grapes ferment into wine, a chemical compound is created that's identical to chemical compounds found in other fruits and foods. So some grape varietals tend to produce the same fruit compounds. Chardonnay, the grape Chardonnay, produces stone fruit or citrus fruits depending on the climate. So if you have grapes that are grown in a warmer climate, you're going to get more stone fruit, and grapes that are grown in a cooler climate, it's going to be a little bit more citrus. And that will really be able to put that into practice as we get a little bit into this. We'll talk a little bit about Alexander Valley, which is where these grapes are grown, and see what we think. So what is everybody picking out?
Apple, peach, a lot of peach actually.
Oh, good.
The stone fruit, perfect, some butter.
Oh, good. Perfect. Okay, good. So I heard a lot of flavors we're tasting, the same that we're smelling. A lot of peach. So that's really good. And a lot of stone fruit. That's great. And another big a tasting note in this wine is apricot, which is something that you don't usually, at least I don't usually taste every day. I don't get from the grocery store. So that could add a little bit of complexity. If you're noticing something else in this wine, it could be something like that. All right, good. So also something that I forgot to mention as you were tasting the wine, when you take a sip of your wine, when you're wine tasting, really swish the wine around in your mouth, almost as if it's mouthwash. It dramatically intensifies the perception of the taste. And really just lets the juice hit all parts of your tongue, which is, important when tasting different things. You get like different flavors, and yeah, so make sure you do that. Okay, so like I mentioned a few minutes ago, this wine, the Gilded Letter Chardonnay, is from Alexander Valley. So Alexander Valley produces Chardonnay that's typically pretty rich, full-bodied, hints of citrus, like some people are mentioning in the chat. Bright flavors of pear and apple. So someone said apple, didn't they, Casey?
Yeah.
Yeah. And tropical fruit like pineapple, someone mentioned, and peaches. So this is from the weather, which is typically chilly during the morning, super warm during the day, and then cool again at night during the growing season. In fact, it can go down to like 40 degrees at night. So it really does get pretty cold, but this actually preserves the grape's natural acidity and that balance of stone fruit and like the toasted notes of brioche that we talked about a little bit, kind of like that butteriness as well. It also leads to wines that are relatively moderate to full bodied. And during the winter, so the Pacific Ocean's nearby, that is really what dominates the climate in the winter. So a lot of wet, cool winters, sometimes they get up to like 50 inches of rain, which kind of recharges the soil while the grapes are dormant. Does anybody have any questions or anything to note about this wine?
Everybody's making me laugh in the comments.
Why? What are they saying?
I'm just being silly. So Robin's still trying to see the leg. So
Okay.
still there. We're working on it.
Okay.
And somebody told her to drink more, and that could be it. That could be it.
That is wonderful advice. I think that's great advice.
Oh, a lot more questions too. I thought I answered some of them about the vintage. So the vintage is the year that the grapes were harvested, correct, Krista?
Yeah, right. The year that the wine was made. So if you look
yes,
at
sorry.
your bottle on the Gilded letter, it's right at the top there. It says vintage 2018.
So when they talk about the vintage of the wine, they're essentially talking about that year. And that's why people will say some years are better than others. The vintage is better because of the rain, the weather, whatever it was that affected the wine grapes that year.
Right, exactly. Yeah. All right, good. Okay, so now we are going to get into the finish of the wine. So this is really going to be like the mouthfeel, the acidity, any oakiness we can pick up. So again, we are going to take another sip, and this time really let it swish around in your mouth like mouthwash, like I mentioned before. And like I said, we're going to take this in 3 steps. So let's do mouthfeel first. So this is like how much body that we think that the wine has. Like how much weight the wine has, how concentrated the flavor is. So again, picking up like what we mentioned before, how does it compare to other wines you've had in the past? And really look for the texture and the thickness. And one way, a good comparison for that is to think about milk. So we have low-fat milk to whole milk. Low-fat milk or skim milk is very thin, very watery. And then comparing that to whole milk is almost creamy, heavy, you get a ton of flavor. That's kind of how you want to think of like whether it's a light-bodied wine or a full-bodied wine. So type in again what you guys think about this wine specifically, whether it's light, moderate, or full-bodied.
Nancy and Kurt, you hit it on the head. It is that 2% milk. It's that like medium
Yeah.
bodied. If you typically drink like those red heavy wines, this is going to taste a lot thinner to you, but truly for a white, it's got some body to it for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Mouth feels smooth.
I saw some
Buttery,
fruity
medium,
flavors
a lot
in
of
there.
medium, and that's all right.
Yeah, I definitely think this is pretty moderate to full. I wouldn't necessarily call this a light wine. So I think the moderate to full, that's great. And again, like everybody's different. Everybody's going to feel something different. But as long as we're in that moderate to full bodied range, I think that we're right on the money with that. I just saw someone say buttery smooth. I like that too. All right, good. So in addition to mouthfeel, body, I've been mentioning acidity a lot. And one way, a good comparison, just like the milk comparison, another way to figure out acidity is thinking about apples. So a low acidic wine would be like baked apples, like in a pie or some sort. Medium acidity would be like a fresh apple. And then high acidity would be like a super sour apple. That's a pretty good way of figuring out how acidic you think a wine is. I also think that very acidic wines, you almost get like that tartness, something that like really stays on your tongue for a little bit, whereas a lower acidic wine is a little bit smoother. So let me know what you guys are thinking about that as well in terms of acidity. And I'm also curious to know if anyone has snacks or cheese or anything. So write in the comments if you have any cheese or any type of snack. Let us know what you're having. And we'll get into pairing a little bit too. So pairing food with a wine really changes a wine and really brings out different flavors. So you might find that like a salty cheese, for example, would pair really well with like the butteriness or an oakiness of the Chardonnay. It could bring out the sweet flavors even more, the fruitiness, the peach that we've been talking about a lot, maybe the pineapple. Yeah. So is anyone having some good snacks?
Are you kidding me? This is killing me. And for somebody, I can't even have the soft cheeses or charcuterie stuff you guys are having. It's insane. These people have gone all out. Our members are incredible. And I would like to come to all of your houses for a tasting. We've got charcuterie, just chocolate. That's all I really need. Brie, Parmesan, prosciutto, more the brie. The brie is what's killing me. Various cheeses, potato chips. That's a good one. Potato chips is actually
a good one.
Really, really well with the next wine, the rosé. But yeah, we've got a lot of people snacking while they're drinking.
Okay, good. All right, great. Okay, so, oh, and are they saying anything about how acidic they think this wine is? I personally think this is pretty moderately acidic. I think on our website, it's rated about a 2 out of 5. Is anyone saying anything about that?
I have regular apple, so I'm assuming that's medium acidity. I got really distracted by the snacks. You guys have not gonna lie, but when I'm looking back at it, I can definitely see. See some, and all of them are pretty fresh apple, low acidity, not too acidic. Totally
awesome.
Yeah, it is that
awesome.
Moderate.
All right, good. Okay, and now I want to hear about oakiness. Who is and is not getting oakiness out of this? So oakiness in a wine, depending on a multitude of factors, including type of oak, way the barrels are made, age of barrels, level of char, the way the winemaker, mix and matches them. Oak barrels can have like a really big impact of scents and flavors to a wine. So we like to think of barrels almost as like a winemaker's color palette, almost the way like a painter, decides how and when he's going to use paint. It's really up to the winemaker of how they want to put these finishing touches on the wine. So if you're also smelling like toast, which we talked a little bit about, like that toasted brioche, smoke, vanilla, chocolate, espresso, nuts, anything like that, that you're most likely picking up scents from aging in new oak barrels. And then as you guys are sensing any oak, let me know in the comments if you think this is oaky or not oaky. So a couple food pairings for this. So this would be a perfect wine for any like lightly seasoned chicken or pork dish. But it would also go really well with like a creamy risotto, pasta, cheeses like everyone has here. I actually think this would be really nice for like a holiday dinner table, like Thanksgiving. I think the label's really beautiful. I think the wine would really go well with all different types of foods, salty, buttery, anything like that. Yeah, so oakiness, anyone picking up oakiness?
I will say this is the most wide answer we've got out of everything. So even that poll, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
We've got 42% yes, 29 no, 29 just a tad. And that's kind of the same as in the comments all over the place.
Awesome.
Someone said very oaky pokey, and that was my favorite so far. A ton of things, American or French, there's just a lot all over the board.
Great, awesome. All right, good. So why don't if we can take one quick question before moving on to our next wine. If anyone has a question, maybe we'll take the first one. Let me know, Casey, if there is one.
Okay. I'm waiting. We'll see. I think a lot of these are still answering the oak questions.
Okay, great.
It would taste good with fettuccine.
Oh, yeah. That would be a really good one.
Is it better to keep wine for years? That's the question we got.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a really good question. I think it depends on the wine. I would say something like a Chardonnay, or, we're going to have a Sangiovese later. I think that would be really good, but something like a rosé, specifically our rosés are made to drink right away. So those I would drink right away. Although I should also say that Firstleaf wines in general are all made to enjoy right away. So there's definitely no need to age wines, but if you, are into that and you want to try it, you can really do any wine that you want. I think a Chardonnay would be great. I also think, a heavier red wine would be great as well. What do you think, Casey?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I am deep into these questions and trying to go through them. But yes, so Oh, a lot of you guys, 75% looks like this is your first virtual tasting. I
Oh,
know
that's
it's
so
not
fun.
everyone's because I recognize some from our smaller tastings.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's move on to the La Douleur Rosé. So where's my bottle? Here it is. Okay, everyone take a little bit in our glass.
Oh, before we do that too, I
Yep.
think we're just going to have more poll questions coming up because
Oh, great.
join. So just letting everyone know.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I'm curious about that question. Yeah, curious to know everyone's wine knowledge, wine level. All right, so can I keep going, Casey? Are we good to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, so the La Douleur Rosé, we're gonna start with that aroma first. So we have it in our glass. Let's swirl it around. Let's put our nose in there and type in what you guys are picking up. There's something in here that we're going to talk a little bit about, and that is floral notes. So this one specifically has a little bit of a rose petal aroma. It also has some raspberry. What else are people saying? Anything else?
Strawberry, lilac, light
Ooh.
raspberry, strawberry. And somebody has a fruit fly. So that's all I got.
Okay, good.
On the rose.
Okay. All right, perfect. So like we said before, I think picking out floral notes and minerality are very, very difficult to pick out. So we were trying to think of the best way for you guys to be able to pick these aromas and tasting notes out eventually when we get to the tasting note. Oh, here we go. Okay, a lot of intermediate. Awesome. Okay.
Well, we've got 4% of you that are experts. I'm intimidated.
Yeah. All right, good. Okay, so back to what I was saying. We were trying to think of the best way for you guys to pick out these difficult aromas and tasting notes. And the best thing we could think of is like this multi-sensory learning. So what you want to do is, while you're on this journey, I think it's important to take a look at what the aromas are and what the tasting notes are. So you'll see rose petal on our website. So the first thing you want to do is picture a rose and what you think it smells like in your mind before smelling or tasting the wine. Then when you smell the wine, see if you can identify it. So let's try that and let me know if it works for anybody. You can also, sorry, go ahead.
Smelling fresh tomatoes. And then now that everybody pointed it out, some other people are smelling it.
Tomatoes, did you say?
Syrah grape. I'm assuming, yes.
Yeah, interesting.
Now that I have to be told it, but now definitely.
Yeah, I could see that. I do get almost like a vegetal smell out of it. Maybe not so much like tomato, but just like vegetal in general. Okay, awesome. Okay, so we can also do this with minerality. So basically simply by like paying attention to and like smelling things in your natural environment. So this is what was making Casey and I laugh earlier when we were going over it, but it's true. So like if there's a rainstorm and you go outside and you have rocks in your backyard, pay attention to what it smells like after the rain. And, you know, there's your wet stone aroma. Or if you're at the beach, really take in that salty air. And there's your salinity in, you know, a rosé or a Sauvignon Blanc. Salinity is pretty common in Sauvignon Blanc. So if you're just paying attention to your natural environment, I think that will really help you guys too.
Yeah, one thing actually, so the sommelier show, some of them said to literally lick stones off the ground, and that's how you would start picking up on minerality. So if you're that in for it, I say try it. I'm not going to be licking any stones recently, but I guess it works.
Yeah, the other thing that Casey and I were looking at earlier that was making us laugh was when the next time you're in a classroom is to really take in the chalky smell, because chalk is in a lot of wines as well. That chalky smell is a pretty earthy tone. And we're like, well, when are people going to be in a classroom? I don't know. It's COVID. We can't go in our kids' classrooms. So, but yeah, just paying attention, I think will help. What was that?
Some people are looking for stones to lick. Karen and David said if you lick stones, you might be pregnant. I just can't. Everybody's cracking me up.
Yeah, or you'll get like some sort of, I don't know, sickness from the bacteria. Let's not do that. Okay, awesome. So we're going to swirl the wine again, and let's look at the appearance. And again, we're going to first look at the color. So for rosé, it can be anything from pink to salmon. There's really a lot of colors you can choose from. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. And we also are going to take a look at the legs. So this wine is actually only 11.5% alcohol, so much lower than that average of 13.5. So to me, I'm definitely seeing less legs. I actually still see a good amount, but I'm seeing less than the Chardonnay. And they're actually falling much, much slower. What are you guys thinking? Are you agreeing with that?
We're debating if it's farm raised salmon or just regular, a lot of salmon, rose gold even.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you look at that, the rim, I could see that, definitely. All right, good. Okay, perfect. Anything else to note before we go forward on the taste?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, so let's taste the wine and let's see if we are getting any of those flavors that we were picking up when we were smelling it too. And again, remember to really swish it around in your mouth so it hits all the different parts of your tongue. And then write in what you guys think. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about Pays-d'Oc region of France, which is where this juice is from. So the warm weather in Pays-d'Oc leads to really juicy rosé grapes, which is funny because when I first took a sip of this wine, I was like, juicy, like it's just so very juicy. I can get that right away. And it really leads to a lot of like raspberry and cherry flavors. The other interesting thing to note about the Pays-d'Oc region is it's responsible for almost 1/4 of France's total annual rosé production. So they really, really know what they're doing. They produce a lot of rosé. What are people saying, Casey? I'm curious. Is anyone getting strawberry, watermelon?
Okay, I'm getting raspberry, floral juiciness. Somebody didn't know we were tasting it. Yes, go ahead and go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Strawberry, raspberry, a lot of that. Some strawberry tangerine. That's a good one.
Oh,
cherry.
I like that. Yep, cherry. Okay, great. And that's from that weather in the Pays-d'Oc region. Really, really leads to a lot of raspberry and cherry. So the next thing I was going to talk about, which we already kind of talked about, is rosé doesn't really need to be aged. It's kind of made to drink right away. And like I said, our wines specifically are made to drink right away. And I also know that our rosés are supposed to be crowd pleasers. They're for everybody, for every style drinker, and for all occasions. Which is really nice. Our winemakers wanted to make really approachable rosés that could just go with everything, but also really make a statement when they are on a table. So I hope that answers any questions about aging a wine. And this is actually a 2020 vintage, so pretty young and ready to drink right away. Any other interesting comments?
No, I just love our numbers though. They really are making my day properly funny.
No, they are great. So something else to just kind of talk about a little bit is just in your wine making journey, to really think of tasting different wines and making almost like an entry in a mental database, which could also be, I think we mentioned a little bit about that tasting sheet that you guys got. Writing things down on your tasting sheets, writing things down on the cards that you get in your shipments, or just, making notes in your mental database. That's how you can decide how the wine you're trying compares to other wines you've tried before. and kind of where it gets classified too. So when we talk a lot about like a light bodied wine, a medium bodied wine, full bodied, you can say like, oh, the gilded Chardonnay that I tried last week is, you know, pretty moderate bodied. I think the La Douleur Rosé that I tried the week after is probably pretty moderate to full as well. Any other interesting comments or questions in there, Case?
Brent's pairing it with sharp cheddar, which sounds really good.
Ooh, that does sound
a lot
good.
of people just talking about rosés in general because it is controversial. People love it or hate it, or they think of it still as that white Zinfandel, and it's definitely not nowadays. So a lot of people are liking this one that doesn't that don't usually drink a rosé. We also
okay, good.
Someone's pairing it with pizza, which incredible.
That's a great idea.
I wish I could remember. I think maybe the name Caroline comes to mind, who was having chips. Well, how you think that is with this one? I forget the name though.
Oh yeah, the potato chips. Oh, and sushi. Yeah, that's a great one. Smoked salmon. I love that too. So now that we are kind of on the topic of food pairings, rosé is also really good for like an aperitif, which is like a before dinner drink. So anything that you're having as like an appetizer, like calamari, sushi was actually one I was going to bring up, potato chips, French fries, anything like that. Rosé really goes well with that type of food. But it's also like a meal food. You can have, you know, a nice hearty salad or, you know, a chicken dish or, you know, fish. It really goes with everything. It's for every food, every occasion. Yeah. I see a laughing face from Robin. Alrighty, great. Okay, so let's finish this wine. And we'll compare it to the other wine. So we are going to go with the mouthfeel and the acidity. So if you take another sip, let's compare the mouthfeel to the Gilded letter. Because we keep talking about like this mental database and, you know, comparing it to other wines you had. So what do you guys think about this compared to the Gilded? And let's think about that milk analogy too. Where do you think this falls on that? And let me know what people are saying too, Casey.
Oh, I find it interesting. So a lot of people mix it both, pair and drink on its own. Okay. Drier, sharper, more acidic, less body, more acidic, more light, which I do believe it is a little bit a lighter mouthfeel. That 1% milk, Robin, I would say it's a 1% where the other one's more like a 2.
Yep.
Smoother, more balanced. So, and people are saying that they're seeing that acidity to it, more acidic, high acidity, definitely.
Great. Okay, good. Yeah. And I think that is and one thing that I think too is like the Gilded letter to me almost had like a creamier mouthfeel. And then like people are saying like this rosé is a little bit more tart, more acidic. Like it really lingers for a while on your tongue. But the flavors are still very concentrated. I still get a lot of flavors. And that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking the Gilded of more like a 2% and the La Douleur more of like a skim milk, because I get like almost that really thin texture from it. Yeah, so that's perfect. And yeah, definitely high acidity, almost tart, like raspberry. It really gives it that like really bright freshness that is what's going really well with the cheese and snacks you guys are having. Yeah, perfect. All right, good. Okay, so why don't we take a couple questions?
Oh, well, I was just seeing what people are saying it less acidic, but maybe it's the cheese. And I was just kind of saying in here, it's very true. Acidic wine is really toned down by acidic food you eat. So depending on the type of cheese, it could taste dramatically different because of that. And that could be why it tastes a little bit less acidic to you if you're having something like that. Oh, someone asked, are tannins really only in reds? Yeah,
okay, just saw that. Perfect. Yes, we're really only going to get tannins from red wine. The tannins come from the skin. And, you know, rosé in the winemaking process, the grapes are only left on the skins for a little bit. So you're really not going to get any tannins in there. And in white wine, the skins are immediately taken off. So that's why you don't get any tannins. So yes, tannins just in red wine. And you probably won't get any oakiness in a rosé. Rosé doesn't usually tend to be aged in oak barrels, whereas white can be and red usually is. So I mentioned oak when we were doing the gilded letter, but I didn't in the rosé because you won't get any oakiness out of this one. Longer finish than I expected. Yeah, I agree. I think this wine really stayed with me for a while, and I think that's from that tartness.
Perfect. Okay, let's move on to the Sangiovese while I get some of these questions answered in the chat, because we have more in some Q&As here. So let's move on to the Sangiovese.
All right, perfect. Okay, so the last one, our Tintoretto Sangiovese. So let's pour a little bit in our glass and we'll get started right away. I am excited about this one. I love this wine. I think this is such a great wine. And then I want to hear everyone's favorites at the end too. Okay, so Tintoretto. So we have a little bit in our glass. Let's swirl it around and we'll take a look at those aromas. Okay, so right off the bat, I'm getting a lot of cherry and a lot of plum. And then there's also a floral aroma in there, which I could not pick out when I first tried this wine, but it's actually violet. So let me know if there's anybody in there in the comments who can pick out violet. So we're going to go back to really exploring your surroundings and using, your environment around you to figure out different smells and different aromas in a wine. So one way that we thought would be good for you guys to be able to pick out floral notes is when the next time you're at like a plant nursery or a garden store, pick out those common floral notes that you're finding in wine and really smell those flowers when you're at the store. It sounds crazy, but I think it will really work, because how else will we know like what violet smells like? I'm not quite sure what violet smells like. So I think that will help in your wine journey as well. Again, just kind of putting emphasis on using everything around you. Is anyone picking up the violet? Has anyone said that?
Yeah, somebody's saying
good.
A lot of cherry, a lot of plum, which is true. I definitely get the plum in this, but yeah, a lot of dark cherry as well.
Awesome. Okay, great. Okay, so let's also take a look at the color. So again, swirl, put it up to a neutral background, take a look at that meniscus. Let me know what you guys are thinking about the color. And while you're also looking at the color, let's take a look at those legs as well. So to me, this is like a nice ruby color. Yeah, I would say like a little bit of like purple in there, purple/ruby. It's a really nice wine. And the alcohol content in this is 13.2%. So more similar to the Gilded than the Rosé was to the Gilded, which makes sense because I do see some legs, although not a lot. And these ones are falling even more slowly, I think, than the first two, which makes sense because I did mention in the beginning that a heavier wine, the legs tend to fall a little bit more slowly. What are people saying in the comments, Casey?
Oh, yes. Ruby, garnet, dark red, cherry red. Completely see that. Somebody asked if the brown on the edges, does that mean it's getting old?
I don't think so. I don't think so. That's a good question though, because I actually do see, you're right. Now that I'm looking at it, it does look almost more like a brown garnet color.
I would say it's the fact that it's the Sangiovese grape itself. It has more of that brownness to it, but also, yeah, the aging in a red wine tends to get more brown with time, but it's a 2019. I would say it's more because it's that Sangiovese grape.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about what makes the color of the wine, since we talked about, what affects a white wine color. So the type of, actually, this is a perfect segue. So this is good. So the type of grape, the degree of ripeness, and the techniques used to extract the color from the skins is what affects the color of a red wine. For example, a Pinot Noir grape is pretty thin skinned, so the color will be lighter compared to a Syrah grape that has a thicker skin. In this wine's case, a Sangiovese grape is pretty thin skinned, but they're usually blended with other grapes, which is what makes this one in particular pretty dark. I would say this is a pretty dark color. Weather also affects color. So a warmer climate produces darker color wine, whereas a lighter color comes from cooler climates. And I mentioned this before, but a darker red is a younger vintage and a lighter red is an older vintage. So like I said, this one is that 2019 vintage. So that's why it is a nice dark red.
All right. People asking, have we started trying it yet? I said, I don't believe so, but go
No.
ahead and start.
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
We were, yeah, I mean, we are on appearance, but we can be drinking the whole time. That's fine. That's the beauty of a wine tasting.
Right.
Okay, we can now go into taste. So let's taste the wine and write in the comments what you guys are thinking. So right away, the fruit forwardness really jumps out at me. Again, I talked about juiciness with the rosé. I think there's a lot of juiciness in this one too. I get the plum and the cherry, a little raspberry. I'm also getting like a little bit of cedar. So there's a little bit of earthiness in this one as well. Is anyone writing in what they think?
A lot of spice notes, deep fruit. And it is true that spice is definitely there with this one. This is one of my favorite wines we have. And somebody's saying too acidic. So, sorry, I read it wrong. Acidic too. Yes.
Oh, acidic too.
Yeah.
And you know what is interesting about the acidity in a red wine too? And we haven't really talked too much about like decanting your wine and letting it sit out for a while, but if you ever find that a red wine is a little too acidic for you, you can leave it open in the bottle or decant it if you have a decanter for like an hour or so. And that sometimes really smooths out the acidity really nicely. I saw someone just say earthy too, and that's great. And I think that's where that spiciness comes from. And I think I mentioned cedar. I'm getting a little bit of cedar as well. That's going to come from that earthiness too. I also noticed someone said tannins. I'm getting a lot of tannins in this one almost right away. As soon as I swallow the wine, it's like, oh yeah, there's that dryness. It's right there. So Sangiovese in general is a pretty sensitive grape. It tastes very different depending on where it's grown. And going back to the acidity, when it comes to acidic wines like a Sangiovese, you can make them less by leaving them open, decanting them, or pairing them with acidic foods. And so like tomatoes, Italian food, anything citrus, vinegar, that will really go well with these. And I know you have a personal story about pairing this wine, Casey. So I'm going to let you tell that.
Okay. Yes, to Christine, the meatballs and sauce. I fell in love with this. We've had the Tintoretto Sangiovese tends to stay around. I absolutely love it. But my first time drinking it a while back when we had it was pairing it with, I am not fancy. I don't make my own sauce, but Rayo's. So the Rayo sauce with meatballs cooked in it together, pairing it with this Sangiovese is incredible. I made it again tonight because I knew I was opening it for my husband to have because he is like struggling to find a good pairing with red wines. And I was like, great jarred sauce. It really is. It really is so good. But anyway.
Rayo's is the best tomato sauce.
It really is.
It's so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so it's just perfect. A great pairing wine. And I had him try it today. He's like, you're right. This does go well together. So it's my favorite.
Okay, awesome. I didn't mention that this Sangiovese is from Puglia, Italy. And that is the region in like the southernmost part of Italy's boot. So there's it's a very warm climate, lots of fertile soil, makes it easy to pretty much grow any type of grape. It's also surrounded by water. So like that cool breeze off of the Mediterranean kind of like makes for some nice vineyard temperatures. And we talked about the food pairings. Any other questions or comments in the chat box?
Yes.
What did everyone think?
I want to make sure we're going to move on to Jake. So we have some questions and answers from him. But a lot of people saying what they're pairing it with, vodka sauce, all of that stuff. Yeah, it's that old world wine. It's meant to be paired with food. So all of these sound absolutely incredible. But Okay, so Jake is going to hop on. We've got some questions. I know the first one I have was asked earlier in the chat, but I saved it just for him. Let me get it back pulled up. I believe Ephraim asked about the alcohol content, what creates it, how it's determined, things like that. So Jake, I'm letting you answer that one.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it can get a little bit nerdy, but I'll try to keep it basic. So the alcohol in wine is created in the process of fermentation. So it's same as like beer or any type of spirits, yeast is used to convert sugars to alcohol. And in that process, that's fermentation. So the kind of the like how alcoholic a wine is going to be really is determined by how much sugar was present in the first place and the yeast's ability to convert that sugar into alcohol. So kind of those in areas like California where it's riper, it's warmer, we're really good at getting high sugars. We're gonna have higher alcohol wines. If it's like cool climate regions, sometimes grapes don't ripen as high, which it's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a fact of that region. You'll have lower alcohol wines. Red wines, we tend to pick a little bit later, higher concentration, more sugar. So that's why those big like California red wines can get up to like 14.5% alcohol. So it really just depends almost on the farming, and then as the yeast does its job and makes wine for us.
Perfect. Okay, so let's see. Oh, someone asked, is it true that wines under 2 years old, you can't save and age them? That's a good question.
Yes, I mean, you can age, I guess you could age any wine you wanted to. And I saw someone else asked earlier, like in that aging process, what is changing? And I think it all depends like on every wine and how it's made. In general, we try to make wines that you can just pop and drink. You don't need to sit and age them. You don't need to put them in a cellar. And in that aging process, in general, kind of on a general point of rule of thumb, wines are going to become less like fresh fruity, and they're going to more to like dried fruits and kind of what we call secondary notes of like caramels and vanillas. If it was on oak, those like oak attributes tend to come out more the longer it's been aged, and the less like the fruit and primary attributes. In general, most wine can be aged, but for how long kind of just depends on the winemaker's choice. So some wines like don't taste good after just 1 year of being in bottle, and they need to be around longer. In general, Firstleaf, we want to make sure when you open up a box, like that wine is ready to go. But you can always age, like our red wines, Italian wines typically age really well. White wines that saw oak, you'll develop more oak flavors, so they can age a little bit. But wine's made for drinking, so I'd always encourage you to pop it open as soon as you can.
Perfect. Sorry, I'm looking at more questions like up farther in the chat. I don't know if I'm missing some of them, but a lot of people now are just, oh, somebody asked about the future of orange wine. That's a good question.
Orange wine is it's a cool question. So orange wine is when you kind of make white wine in a similar manner as we make red wine. So it's like leaving it on its skins. And so it's going to be exposed to more oxygen. And like Krista was talking about before, like the oxygen is what colors the wine. So when it's on the skins, it's exposed to more oxygen, it develops this like orange and kind of like brownish hues to it. It's in certain regions of France, it's how they make wine. But it all just kind of depends on style, like the grapes you're using. So we don't do it too much in California or other parts of the world, but it's for sure popular in some regions.
Jake, there's someone here too that I see says, tell your story. Can you tell a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I can tell a bit about my background. So let's see, I got into kind of the wine region from a farming background. I had an uncle who was a vineyard manager in Napa when I was growing up, and I'd spend my summers basically bugging him and hanging out. So I came in kind of from the farming side. First job was a viticulturist in Napa Valley, and kind of learned that you could make wine and travel the world at the same time right out of college. So kind of moved from the vineyard side, worked in cellars in New Zealand and Chile, and kind of just built experience from that and had a great time working harvests all over, meeting people, I mean, drinking wine. It was a good lifestyle as a young adult. And then ended up in Sonoma County, got a little tired of living out of a backpack, and started working in the wine industry up here. And worked in both the vineyard side and the winemaking side, and now work with Firstleaf.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's see. I think it's about most of the questions. Oh, we'll just do this one last one I see on here, and then I'm going to go through some of our closing information. But Jake, someone said, wait, where did it go?
Are you looking for that Pinot Noir question?
Yes,
Yeah,
here it is.
okay.
I heard Pinot Noir in Italy has bubbles. Is that true? My daughter had some there. So let's do that as our final question, then I'll go through some closing stuff.
Pinot Noir in Italy. So the bubbles in wine that's more of like a winemaking choice. So if there's carbonation in the wine, like Prosecco or Champagne sparkling wine, that will have bubbles. So it kind of just depends on like the winery's decision there. Natural, when you ferment wine, yeast creates CO2 and alcohol is like the byproduct of fermentation. So if you drink typically like a really young wine, and I'm saying like 2 months or like a month old, it'll have bubbles naturally. So that could have been what that wine was. That's just a guess.
Great.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Jake. I'm going to go over some of our closing information. So let's go over. So the reason we just asked if you'd be interested in future smaller tastings events, I know some of you all have attended some of them, but we're going to be doing a lot more coming up. So smaller intimate tastings, either that you want to do with your friends, or for example, over the holidays, like you have family that's all over the country and isn't able to travel, we're happy to host some virtual tastings for you in like a very interactive setting because of the amount of people. It's very hands-on and we'll be talking a lot during it. So after this, you're going to get a follow-up email. It's going to have a set more link to book appointments with our wine concierge team, such as Krista and I. But when you're on there, the appointment type that says wine tasting inquiry, you can just click there and it will lead you just to Krista and I, because we are the ones hosting them. And we'll give you some more information on it. We'll work something out together because I'm speaking for myself, but I think Krista too, it's my favorite thing to do here. I absolutely love it. So I'm very happy and thrilled if you guys want to book and talk about having some smaller tastings. I also letting you guys know that for National Gratitude Day, we have 15% off Firstleaf exclusive wine. So if you order 6 or more bottles, if you use the code THANKFUL15, all one word, it's extended to the participants of the tasting. And I believe that ends at the end of day tomorrow. So as I said, that set more link will be sent out. Also, the recording of this will be on YouTube, hopefully within 24 hours. That's what we're aiming for. And a survey afterward providing that you can provide feedback on the tasting. I also know there was questions about having these open wines now. Oh, shout out to Lauren. Yes, she's probably on here, Tim and Chris. Some of our wine concierges are on here listening, and Lauren is the best. There she is. Hi. Okay. But I just want to let you guys know all of that information. Now, Krista, if you want to lead us out by telling us more about like saving or how to keep these wines good, how to store them for the next few days while people work on them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it kind of depends on how you're going to close the wines. If you have one of those like airtight cork things, or you can just put the regular cork back in. I leave my wines open for about 3 to 5 days, and I think they're fine. The other thing that I thought you guys could do with these extra wines is kind of have your own wine tasting event, wine pairing dinner, if you will, this weekend. And if you need suggestions on like what food to use, you can email Casey or I, and we'd be happy to help you. But yeah, these will be good for about 3 to 5 days. And then I would say use them for your own kind of pairing.
Sorry, I just want to tell the people in the comments, you guys really made my day. Everybody made me laugh. Like, it was a pleasant surprise how funny all of our members are. Like, you're all the best. And I wish I was near you all so we could hang out and have a tasting. I mean, word that I could actually participate in, but you guys are.
Some people were talking in the comments who live close to me in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. That's not too far from me.
All right. Well,
thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your participation and your loyalness and everything. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your
Have
night.
a good night. Bye guys.